For nearly 2 decades, Red Bull Racing stood as an impenetrable fortress of speed, a symbol of Austrian engineering might and ruthless competitive spirit that redefined the modern era of Formula One. However, the facade of champagne showers and podium finishes masked a decaying core of betrayal and corporate espionage. Dr. Helmut Marko, the legendary kingmaker who discovered Max Verstappen, has finally unleashed a torrent of explosive revelations that threaten to incinerate what remains of the team's legacy. This isn't just a sporting summary, it is a forensic autopsy of a fallen dynasty. Marko's testimony paints a haunting picture of a world where loyalty was a liability and ambition was a weapon. As the dust settles on the Christian Horner era, the world is finally seeing the jagged glass beneath the velvet rug. The silence has been broken, and the truth is far more damaging than any on-track defeat could ever be for the Milton Keynes squad. The tectonic plates of the Red Bull empire shifted forever on the day Dietrich Mateschitz, the enigmatic founder and ultimate arbiter of the brand, passed away in 2022. For years, Mateschitz was the sun around which the entire organization orbited, providing a singular source of authority that kept egos in check and departments in harmony. Helmut Marko functioned as his direct shadow, wielding absolute power over the sporting side with a simple handshake. But when the patriarch died, he left behind a massive, agonizing power vacuum that invited the wolves to the door. According to Marko, the instability was not an accident, but an opportunity for those who had long chafed under the Austrian hierarchy. The passing of the big boss didn't just leave a hole in the heart of the team, it signaled the start of a cold-blooded hunt for total control. Without Mateschitz' iron grip, the internal balance of power evaporated, setting the stage for a brutal and public execution of the team's original DNA. In the wake of Mateschitz' death, Marko alleges that Christian Horner executed a calculated and cold-blooded pivot toward the east. The accusation is staggering. Horner supposedly attempted to bypass the Austrian headquarters entirely by forging a clandestine alliance with the Uvidya family, the 51% majority owners based in Thailand. This wasn't merely a strategic business realignment. Marko views it as a palace coup designed to dismantle the very foundation of the team's operational structure. By aligning with the Thai faction, Horner allegedly sought to insulate himself from European oversight and consolidate a level of personal influence unprecedented in the history of the sport. The goal was clear: to transform Red Bull Racing from a collaborative Austrian-British venture into a private fiefdom where Horner's word was law. This move effectively split the team into 2 warring nations, pitting the original racing purists against a new, aggressive corporate regime focused on total dominance. The conflict did not remain confined to polite boardroom disagreements. It devolved into what Marko describes as a sickening series of dirty games and psychological operations. Marko alleges that the final chapters of Horner's tenure were defined by a systematic campaign of character assassination and misinformation. Internal leaks began to plague the team, with controversial and often offensive statements regarding driver Sergio Perez or sensitive engine development secrets being falsely attributed to Marko himself. These weren't accidental slips of the tongue. They were, in Marko's estimation, deliberate tools of espionage designed to erode his reputation and alienate him from the staff and the public. By painting Marko as a liability and a relic of a bygone era, the Horner faction allegedly hoped to create a public and internal pretext for his immediate removal. It was a war of narratives, where the truth was the first casualty, replaced by a calculated strategy of gaslighting and professional sabotage. The internal machinations reached a fever pitch during a weekend that almost saw the sport's greatest talent walk away from the grid. As the walls closed in on Helmut Marko, with suspension or outright dismissal appearing imminent, the team's crown jewel, Max Verstappen, was forced to step into the political fire. In a moment of unprecedented tension, the reigning world champion issued a definitive ultimatum: if Marko goes, I go. This wasn't just a gesture of loyalty. It was a nuclear option that brought the entire Red Bull board to its knees. Verstappen's intervention revealed the terrifying depth of the governance crisis, proving that the corporate infighting had become so toxic it threatened to derail the most successful driver team pairing in history. The fact that a driver had to act as the ultimate peacemaker and shield for his mentor highlights a total collapse of management. Max didn't just save Marko's job. He exposed the fact that the team's leadership was no longer fit to govern its own champions. One of the most damning aspects of Marko's statement is his conviction that the Red Bull board suffered from a fatal case of indecision. He argues with brutal honesty that the organization acted far too slowly in addressing the Horner situation. Marko firmly believes that if the decision to remove Horner had been executed the moment the Dirty Games began, the team would have retained its focus and technical superiority. Instead, the lingering toxicity allowed rivals to close the gap, bleeding energy away from the wind tunnel and into the courtroom. Marko suggests that this internal paralysis didn't just hurt feelings, it potentially cost them the 2025 World Championship. By allowing the civil war to drag on for months, the team sacrificed the stability required to maintain their engineering edge. In the high-stakes world of Formula One, where milliseconds matter, Red Bull spent months fighting themselves, while the rest of the grid spent months fighting for the trophy. The price of this delay may be the loss of their crown. While the media portrays the recent shifts as a chaotic purge, Helmut Marko views his eventual departure through a much more philosophical and dignified lens. He refuses to frame his exit as a defeat in the war against Horner, but rather as the natural conclusion to a mission that began decades ago. Marko's entire identity within the team was tethered to the singular vision of Dietrich Mateschitz. Without the founder's presence, the spiritual anchor of the team had already vanished. Marko suggests that once the core conflict reached its resolution and the balance of power was in his eyes, realigned to prevent total Horner hegemony, his specific function was fulfilled. He isn't leaving because he lost the fight. He is leaving because the Red Bull he helped build no longer exists in its original form. His departure marks the end of the old guard, a final closing of the book on a period of racing history where passion and intuition outweighed corporate spreadsheets and political maneuvering. With both the polarizing presence of Christian Horner and the stern guidance of Helmut Marko now fading into the rearview mirror, the burden of leadership falls onto figures like Laurent Mekies. The task ahead is nothing short of Herculean. Mekies isn't just managing a race team. He is managing a trauma ward. He faces the daunting challenge of stabilizing a governance structure that has been shattered by years of debilitating factionalism and deep-seated paranoia. Rebuilding internal trust among engineers, mechanics, and support staff, who were forced to pick sides in a civil war, will take years, not months. Mekies must find a way to honor the winning culture of the past while excising the toxic habits that nearly destroyed the team from within. The success of this new Red Bull depends entirely on whether they can foster a transparent environment where performance is the only metric that matters, effectively burying the ghosts of the Horner-Marko era deep beneath the tarmac. The Red Bull saga serves as a chilling case study for every major organization in the world, demonstrating that on-track dominance can be a beautiful mask for a rotting foundation. For years, the team's blistering speed and strategic brilliance convinced the public that they were a well-oiled machine. In reality, the technical department was performing miracles in spite of the management, not because of it. Marko's testimony reveals how a power struggle at the highest echelon of a multi-billion-dollar entity can permeate every single layer of the organization, from the pit wall to the factory floor. It proves that no amount of success can insulate a team from the destructive power of unchecked ego and corporate greed. The very traits that made them winners: aggression, ruthlessness, and a desire for control eventually turned inward and began consuming the host. Red Bull's story is a reminder that the fastest car in the world can still be steered off a cliff by the hands of those fighting over the wheel. As the dust settles on this unprecedented internal explosion, the clock is ticking toward the most significant technical upheaval in Formula One history. The 2026 regulation changes represent a total reset of the sport, requiring a level of harmony and technical focus that Red Bull currently lacks. With the leadership in flux and the scars of the Civil War still fresh, the team's ability to navigate these monumental challenges is in serious doubt. Helmut Marko's revelations have not only exposed the past, they have cast a long, dark shadow over the future. Can a team that spent its energy on espionage and legal battles pivot back to pure engineering in time to fight off a surging Ferrari and a resurgent McLaren? The tragedy of the Red Bull Civil War is that its true cost hasn't been fully realized yet. The world will find out in 2026 if the team traded their long-term survival for a short-term power play. The kingdom has been divided, and history shows that a house divided against itself cannot remain at the front of the grid.